CFA here with you guys. Today's episode, we're going to talk about why it might make sense for you to hang on to your copper cents. Hey guys. Alright, today we're going to talk about copper cents. Alright, typically on CFA, we're more into the numismatic value of coinage. We're looking at key dates, we're looking at low mintage key dates, we're looking at heirs, we're looking at filling our books, our collections. Today we're going to talk more about the intrinsic value of the copper within a copper cent. The U.S. government first started producing the cent in 1793. At the time, they were nearly 100% copper, and they were quite large. Hence, the early ones are known as the large cent. Now, as time went by, mid-1850s, they dropped down to 88% copper, and they added some nickel in there. And also, the size got smaller. Then as you maneuvered into the Indian head to the Lincoln cent, in 1909 was the first Lincoln cent. They were 95% copper, but again, the size got smaller, weighing only 3.11 grams. Then in 1943, due to the war effort, World War II, copper was needed, so they made them out of a zinc-coated steel. And the 43s are known as a steel cent, and they were actually even much smaller at 2.72 grams. So after 1943, from 44 to 81, as you see, there was very little change. They were basically 95% copper, 5% zinc, and they weighed 3.11 grams. Jump to 1982, that's when the rising copper prices made the government change their mind a little bit about how they wanted the composition of these coins to be. So half of 1982, you've got the same composition as the previous years, 95% copper, weighing 3.11 grams. But then the other half, they changed to a copper-plated zinc. It's almost entirely zinc, which is copper on the outer layer. And those coins weigh 2.5 grams approximately. Alright guys, so now we had a little look there at the composition and the amount of copper that's in a cent and the various years and the differences and the weights and all that good stuff. Now you might be wondering, why do we care? Alright, well, it's all about the historical value of copper, the rising costs of producing the cent, what it costs the government, and what the future may hold as far as that cent. So let's go ahead and take a look at the copper prices per metric ton over the last, we'll go back to the early 60s. Alright guys, as you can see, the price, this is metric ton of copper. It was pretty flatline going into the mid 60s, started to bounce around. When we get into the 70s, big spike in the early 70s, big spike there. And actually at that time, the government decided to experiment with some aluminum coins. They made about 1.5 million pennies that were made of aluminum and a bronze-clad steel. But there was a public outcry against it. There was a lot of reasons why people didn't like that. One was vending machine owners were worried that it would cause problems with their machines, and there were some other things too. But those were all collected and destroyed. There is one aluminum cent that was donated to the Smithsonian. But then as we move on, you see another spike in the 80s. It's like 1981, right in that range. And that is when the government decided, you know what? It's getting too expensive. The cost of a copper is too high. So that's when they turned to zinc. And the coins were zinc from then on, as we talked about earlier. And you can see that there's another big spike in the early 2000s. Now the main reason for this is China. As China's economy grew, their need for copper grew. Alright guys, now that we've seen how copper prices have increased over the years, and may possibly continue to go up, what does that mean for our copper cents? Well, let's take a look. We already talked about how 1 copper cent equals 3.11 grams. Okay, 3.11 grams. And if you look at that, there is approximately 453.6 grams in 1 pound. That would tell you that there is approximately 146 copper cents per pound. Okay? Now, I looked at today's, well, this is February of 2017, and the current price, I looked at kitco.com online, the current price of copper is $2.69 per pound. Okay? That would equal, you take that and that would equal 1.8 cents per copper cent. Today's value, 1.8 cents, which would equal an 80% premium over face value. $80 premium. 80% premium to face value. So then you might be wondering, well, why aren't people melting them down all the time? Why aren't they getting that value? Well, the U.S. Mint realized what was happening in the early 2000s as the prices were soaring. In 2006, they made it illegal to melt nickels or pennies for their value, or to export them out of this country in mass quantities. They estimated that it would cost around $43 million to taxpayers to replace even 1% of those coins if they were melted down. Okay, so that's a law. What happens if I go ahead and melt some down anyway? Well, the violation is a $10,000 fine and up to 5 years in prison. Or both. Alright, so now you're saying, well, Coins for Amateurs just told me why I can't melt the pennies, why it's illegal, I might go to prison, might face a $10,000 fine, so why would I even consider hoarding them, saving them, keeping them? Well, look at it this way. The government in the past has made it illegal to melt them. Back in the 70s, for a few years, they made it illegal to melt them, and then it wasn't again. Okay, so what if they change the rule later down the road? What's going to happen? I may have a hoard of pennies sitting there with an 80% premium, or more, depending on the value of copper at the time. I mean, the world's economy is going to keep growing. China's going to keep growing, I assume, right? I mean, there's going to be more need for copper in the world for wiring and manufacturing and a lot of variety of reasons. Okay? And if you look at today, it costs the U.S. government 1.5 cents to make 1 cent. And that's not the copper cents. Remember, we're making zinc now. So 1.5 cents to make a zinc cent. So why would they continue doing this at a cost? So what if the government decides to just stop making pennies? We're not going to make cents anymore. I would assume then it would probably be legal to go ahead and melt down the ones you have. I don't know. Now myself, as a numismatic collector, you know, I'd hate to see all those be melted down. You know, I'm at least going to go through them and look for error coins and fill my collections. But you out there, who knows? Maybe you want to save them just for that copper value. Down the road, anything could happen.